Consigned inventory supplier collaboration. The objectives for this topic are as follows. After completing the lesson, you should be able to describe the job role supplier inventory manager, review consumption devices in supplier portal, review consigned inventory in supplier portal, and review consigned inventory transactions in the supplier portal. Our first topic describes the consigned inventory process flow. This diagram, which we have already reviewed a few times, depicts the consigned inventory process flow. All of the previously discussed steps in this flow are still valid for the lesson. However, the focus of this lesson is on the supplier inventory manager job role and the addition of consigned inventory related tasks in the supplier portal. This topic describes the job role of the supplier inventory manager in the supplier portal. This diagram shows how the job role of the supplier inventory manager operates. The supplier inventory manager in a supplier organization is responsible for managing inventory process control from beginning to end. This includes monitoring available supplies, materials, and products to ensure that customers, employees, and production have access to the materials that they need. The supplier portal enables suppliers to monitor the consigned inventory process within the buyer's organization. Suppliers can review consumption advices, track configured inventory on-hand quantities, review inventory transactions, and monitor consigned inventory aging. The Consigned Inventory Task Group is available on the Supplier Portal work area. This allows suppliers to easily navigate to all consigned inventory related tasks. Suppliers have access to information such as consumed quantities and inventory on-hand quantities. For example, how much consigned inventory does the buyer have on hand and how much has been consumed over the past month? These features provide the supplier with full visibility of the consignment process. The supplier consigned inventory user interfaces are navigable from the supplier portal work area. This screen shows how the supplier portal enables suppliers to monitor the consigned inventory process within the buyer's organizations. Suppliers are able to review consumption devices and associated consumption transactions. The supplier inventory manager can review the consumption device details including creation, start, and end dates. Additionally, the supplier inventory manager can review the consumption transactions associated with the consumption device by clicking the View Consumption Transactional buttons. The navigation for this page is Supplier Portal, Consigned Inventory, then Review Consumption Devices. Next, the screenshot shows how the Review Consigned Inventory user interface provides the supplier inventory manager with the capability to review consigned inventory on-hand quantities and aging expiration details. The supplier inventory manager can review consigned inventory quantities at the buyer's inventory organization. Additionally, the supplier inventory manager can review consigned inventory subjects to aging. The navigation for this page is Supplier Portal, Consigned Inventory, then Review Consigned Inventory. And finally, we see how the Review Consigned Inventory Transaction user interface provides the supplier inventory manager with the capability to review consigned inventory related transactions. The supplier inventory manager can review both transfer to owned and transfer to consigned transaction types. A transaction type of transfer to owned transfers consigned inventory to owned inventory. A transaction type of transfer to consigned transfers owned inventory back to its original consigned state. To access this page, you go to Supplier Portal, Consigned Inventory, and Review Consigned Inventory Transactions. To summarize our topic, in this lesson we should now have learned how to describe the job role Supplier Inventory Manager, review consumption devices in Supplier Portal, review consigned inventory in Supplier Portal, and review consigned inventory transactions in the Supplier Portal. Consigned Inventory Payables Matching. The objectives for this topic are as follows. After completing this lesson, you should be able to explain consigned inventory payment processing, describe how a consumption device is matched to a payable invoice, explain the various methods for creating invoices, describe how the consumption device is referenced in payables, describe consigned inventory related setups in payables, and describe consigned inventory related reports. Our first topic is Consigned Inventory Process Flow. As referenced in several previous lessons, this diagram depicts the consigned inventory process flow. The focus of this lesson is on matching financial settlement between the buyer and supplier for consigned inventory. As before, This diagram and all of its steps are simply referenced here for the context of the lesson. This section describes how Oracle Fusion Payables supports the ability to match invoices to consumption advices. This diagram depicts how Oracle Payables supports the ability to match invoices to consumption advices. This enables the Accounts Payable Specialist to enforce control over excess billing for consumption advice matching invoices. Also, invoice adjustments, such as price and quantity correction, can be performed for consumption advice matched invoices. The consumption advice is referenced on supplier payment and supplier remittance advices. The Accounts Payable Specialist can also adjust consumption advice invoices for returns if the goods are returned after the ownership changes. Additionally, the debit memo can be automatically generated based on supplier setups. This diagram shows the multiple ways in which invoices can be matched to a consumption device which is created in Oracle Payables. Invoices can be created automatically when the consumption device is generated and the Pay on Use option has been enabled on the agreement. In this case, the invoice is created using predefined document number generation logic. You can also configure gapless invoice numbers, which is specific to a supplier. Invoices can also be created manually in the invoice work area. The Accounts Payable Specialist can identify the consumption device number based on the purchase order number and create invoices matched to specific or multiple consumption devices. Invoices can also be created manually through Supplier Portal. The supplier can log in based off of the login credentials which will be provided and create an invoice. And consumption device matched invoices can be created using a spreadsheet upload utility as well. Here, we see a system screenshot showing how Oracle Payables supports the ability to match invoices to consumption advices. This enables the Accounts Payable Specialist to enforce control over excess billing for consumption device matched invoices. Also, invoice adjustments such as price and quantity corrections can be conformed for consumption device matched invoices. The consumption device is also referenced on supplier payments and supplier payments remittance advice. The navigation to this is under Payables, Invoices, Create Invoice, and Match Invoice Lines. Here is an additional screenshot that shows how the consumption advice document number is referenced on the supplier payment remittance advice. This provides the supplier with the ability to trace payment back to the associated consumption advice. The navigation for this is through Payables, Payments, Manage Payments, and Print Remittance. Our next topic describes the consigned inventory setups on the supplier site. If the Pay on Use option is enabled at the supplier site level and also at the agreement level, upon generation of the consumption device, the invoice is created automatically. Additionally, if the Create Debit Memo from Return option has been enabled at the supplier site level, upon generation of consumption advice with returns, the debit memo is also created automatically. The navigation to this setup is through Procurement, Suppliers, Manage Suppliers, and then Supplier Sites. Two types of quantity tolerances are used for consigned inventory invoices. They are consumed percentage and maximum consumed quantity. Based on the definition of these tolerances, when you validate an invoice matched to a consumption device, matching holds may be applied if the billed quantity is in excess of the consumed quantity. Navigation for this setup is through the Setup and Maintenance screen and Manage Invoice Tolerances task. The next topic describes consigned inventory reports. The Seated Payables report, named Payables Matching Detail Report, lists all the invoice details that are matched to consumption device documents. The Payable Specialist can run this report routinely to assist with matching supplier invoices to consumption-related transactions. In this lesson, we should have now learned the following: how to explain consigned inventory payment processing, describe how a consumption device is matched to a payables invoice, explain the various methods for creating invoices, describe how the consumption advice is referenced in payables, describe consigned inventory related setups in payables, and describe consigned inventory related reports.